Hey folks, this is going to be a quick little commentary video over a 15 Grimrail Depot run that was sent to me by Late over on the Prop Warrior Discord. I thought it'd be useful to just go over this dungeon a little bit, show what we can do specifically as Prop Warriors to make things a little bit easier, and just generally stuff to watch out for in the instance as a tank. So, starting the instance here, there's not a huge amount to worry about. You've basically got two mobs that you actually have to deal with mechanics on. You've got the Overseers, who are going to just put a nice big red arrow on you and spam a bunch of dashes through you. Doesn't do too much damage, just keep shield block up as always, and you should be pretty much good. If you wanted to be really efficient with it, you could point the Overseers into a wall, and that way they don't really move. Your DPS get a little bit more damage, but it's not a huge concern either way. And if they do dash sort of 50 yards away, you could just get a reprisal proc on them, and you'll be fine. The other mob that is a little bit more important here is the Technician that you're seeing now. It's just going to spam cast activation on the Iron Star. You can interrupt that with a multitude of abilities as you're seeing here. We've got Stun, we've got Intimidating Shout. But if you disrupt it in that way, a Stun or a Knockback or a Fear or whatever, it will just immediately try to recast. Whereas if you actually just kick it, or pummel it rather, it should, in theory, just completely stop. If that does somehow, because of Inspiring or whatever else, if the Iron Star activation does go off, you can just rally it and maybe your group will be fine. But on higher levels and probably on Fortified, it is just going to kill your group. So just watch out for that. But in terms of routing on this dungeon, there essentially is none. You just hold W the entire time. The only way you're going to be able to skip any mobs is with Invis. But for most of your runs, you're just going to be running forward, killing all the mobs. So, yeah. One thing you'll notice in this gameplay is that Late is pretty much just constantly chain pulling. As soon as he's out of combat, he's immediately just running straight into the next thing to keep the banner up as long as humanly possible. I think that Grimrail is actually an instance where you can quite easily get a 100% banner up time because there is essentially no forced RP and very, very little downtime. So I think actually 100% banner is pretty doable in this place. I think Late actually gets pretty close here, or maybe he even hits 100% uptime on banner. So on this boss, really all you're going to want to be doing is keeping up shield block, again, as per usual, and just charging Rocket Spark, little goblin man, every time he charges, or every time he jumps. Keep the bosses stacked up for some nice cleave, and keep your reprisals procs going, keep those charge stacks nice and low. Pointing the mad dash into the goblin here, knocks him down, he takes double damage. Be a good opportunity here to maybe save an outburst proc or save Avatar to just do what Late is doing here and just throw some absolutely massive double damage outburst shield slams into the boss and just really destroy him. But most of the time you're going to want to just hit those buttons on cooldown for the rage generation. Boss jumps away, charge into him, keep the two bosses stacked up, get that nice cleave damage going. And again, I think we see here he's kind of holding Ravager for a few seconds, holding Avatar to get that big outburst, double cast into the Goblin, get Ravager down now, double damage, and just get those nice big shield slams where they need to be. So, in theory on this boss, you are supposed to kill them at the same time, because if you kill one boss, the other one will enrage. This is very much a problem if you somehow kill the big guy first, because you're just going to have double damage rockets being spammed and you're going to die very quickly. But realistically, we can just kill the goblin as soon as possible, and all you're going to have here is a brute that is sort of meleeing you for double damage, but you're a prop warrior, so melees don't do anything to you. Just keep up shield block the entire time. There is no way to get a reprisal charge on this guy just by running out, so if you want that, you will have to actually leap away to get that, but that's totally fine. Just don't get hit in the back and you should be good. And this boss is pretty simple, and the some guy in his group is accurately stating there that Warrior Tank is in fact meta and is in fact the greatest class to exist in the game, so that's good. People are starting to learn. These two Dreadlords, you are going to want to pull these out. One of them is the named one. you're going to want to pull these two out and deal with them in here so that you're not constantly having to dodge rockets. Just a note that the Hypnosis Bat that the named Dreadlord spawns will, I believe, instantly kill if that cast goes off. But, I mean, Shockwave, Intimidating Shout will both stop it, and that's a really easy mechanic to deal with. So, nothing too complicated there. One thing to note is that you get a debuff when this thing melees you. That is spell reflectable. So unless something else is happening, you do actually want to just cast Spell Reflect on cooldown here, because that will reflect the debuff onto him, and I believe it does do pretty good damage. Just don't waste it if there's something else on the pack that you need it for. These two mobs, you're just going to want to run them straight up. I think if you get too far away from the first Bombardier, it will just start chain casting bombs like it's doing now. So you do always want to be in melee range of it if possible. Otherwise, it will just start killing your melee. These two mobs, I mean, you can see Late's health here. He's not going to go low in any kind of meaningful, scary way, but it is a surprising amount of damage that he takes here, considering he has shield block up the whole time. Yeah, you know, he goes to sort of 40% there. These mobs have bleeds, and they also have stacking damage buffs. The thing you can see, he's got 10 stacks off there. Looks like Recklessness, the icon. That, I believe, stacks infinitely. So just, if you're doing this on a higher level, if it's fortified, something like that, just watch out for him. Keep up shield block always. Hit a Fleshcraft or a shield wall if you've got a lot of stacks of the bleed. You should be fine. Alright, into the train carts. Again, there's sort of 2 really scary mobs in here, and a few that also do some stuff. Gunner is what he's fighting now. So this is going to just spam cast Shrapnel Blast. This is just a frontal fire thing that puts a very rapidly stacking dot on you. You can Spell Reflect 1 tick of it, so you definitely want to do that. Although, I think what you might actually want to do is to let yourself get all of the stacks of Shrapnel Blast and then Spell Reflect afterwards, just to get the nice consistent magic damage reduction. You can dodge Shrapnel Blast. It targets you initially, but then you can step to the side. Just be careful that you aren't pointing that onto your ranged, because they will die very fast. The other mob here that he's just engaged is the Cinderseer. I'm actually just going to pause really quickly here. So Cinderseer has 2 abilities. First one is Flame Tongue. So what this does is it puts a patch of fire on the ground, which obviously is fire and it hurts you. But perhaps more importantly, it actually buffs enemy mobs. So you can see here the icon that looks like a lava burst over the Nethrezim Infiltrator here. That's what that looks like. I don't know the exact percent, but it makes it do a lot more damage. I believe Late actually, again, on a 15 tyrannical to take some sort of considerable damage intake like this is kind of worrying, right? Again, it goes to sort of 30% here. On a higher level, on a fortified, that's going to get scary. So definitely move yourself and move the mobs out of fortified. Also, if you play Tauren or any other kind of large race, please bring a toy to make yourself smaller. Banner and Avatar both make you bigger. And if you're a Tauren in this place, or even probably like a Draenei, for some reason, you are going to make it so no one can see anything, least of all yourself. Again, Shrapnel Blast, hitting him pretty hard here, just a really scary ability. You can stun the mob halfway through Shrapnel Blast, that makes it easier. Again, you can move out of it. But yeah, definitely on all these packs that have gunners, you need to be aware. The other mob here is the Boomers. These are not desperately scary for you. You'll see here in a moment they're going to start spamming Cannon Barrage. This, I believe, always points towards a ranged. You can see it's the visual is kind of crap. It's sort of hard to tell what it's doing. Realistically, the safest way for you to deal with it is to just stand behind wherever the mob is facing. But again, this is damage that's scary to DPS. It's not damage that's scary to you, but it is damage all the same, and you should try to avoid it. So the easiest way to do that, stand behind the Boomers when they're spamming Cannon Barrage. This Hulk doesn't really do anything. He just melee swings. He's got a lot of health, so I think you're probably going to end up chain pulling him into the next pack. Although the next pack this is definitely the scariest pack in the instance. So just to pause here, you'll see what we've got. Kind of hard to tell. Let me actually just crank the quality. Oh, no, quality's already maxed. That's fine. So this pack has 2 Syndeseers and a Gunner. So the other ability that I mentioned the Syndeseers have is this thing, Lava Wreath. So it says 10-yard range. Ignore that. It can definitely have higher range than that. This thing always targets your healers in ranged, as far as I'm aware. Although I did have a run earlier where I had 3 melee. And on this pack, because there are 2 Syndeseers, 1 Lava Wreath went on my healer, and another one went on my melee DPS, and they both got silenced and did a bunch of AoE damage to us, and it really sucked. So anyway, this is going to go on a healer or a ranged, and they just need to spread. But obviously, this is Grimrail Depot. There is absolutely no fucking space to spread whatsoever. So be aware, try and track this if you can. If this goes on your healer, you are going to want to be careful if there's a gunner putting Shrapnel Blast on you, because they might be silenced for 3-4 seconds. In that case, you are going to want to slam something big. So just be careful and aware for that, and we're actually going to see the effect of that in just a moment here. Again, pointing these Shrapnel Blasts away from the group, pumping that damage with Ravager. You can see him on the meters there, doing some really sick damage. But unfortunately, bunch of stacks of Shrapnel Blast, healer gets silenced, and he hits the floor. In this scenario, what you want to do is just release, get back in there as quickly as you can. It's a very short run, and it's actually quite difficult for these mobs to kill your ranged DPS because all of their abilities make them stand in place and do pretty light damage. So you see here, yes, all the melee die, but he managed to continue the pull. Get back in there, drop a challenging shout maybe if you don't get the threat back straight away, and clean it up. So yeah, Syndeseers, watch out for the Flame Tongue. Move mobs out of it. You can see it on the floor there. It's a pretty crappy effect. Hopefully they'll fix that, make it a little bit more obvious. Move them out of the Flame Tongue, move yourself out of the Flame Tongue, and don't die to a dot. And don't blame your shield late, okay? Poor Craftsman blames his tools, alright? Come on now. Alright, this boss sucks. I'm gonna be real honest. Getting him to 60% here, this is gonna feel very boring and like nothing is happening, and that's because it is very boring and nothing is happening. But that's good, because this is an opportunity for you guys to get a really, really sick banner stacked up, okay? You are going to want to be reprising this guy on cooldown when he does this Black Rock Mortar, and you are just getting as big of a banner as possible. You want to come out of this phase with sort of 15-20 seconds on banner if you can, and you're sort of seeing why here, is that this is the closest thing to sort of forced RP this boss has, right? You're not hitting anything for a pretty extended period. I think what you're actually going to want to do is, as soon as those walls go down, you're going to want to leap into the boss and charge him, get a nice big hit of rage, and then get ready to start dealing with these mobs. So on this phase of the fight, really all you're going to want to be doing is picking up mobs, generating rage, keeping up banner, and just keeping them as stacked as possible and letting your DPS deal with any mechanics. If you do end up picking up any of the mortar shells, then obviously it is your job in that scenario to throw them at the boss. But realistically, this is a pretty chill fight as a tank. You're just grabbing mobs, stacking them up, AoEing them down. There are gunners here. They do Shrapnel Blast. They do not hurt as much as the regular Shrapnel Blasts on Trash, but if you're doing a higher key, and you pump a bunch of these into your group, or you get hit by a bunch of them without using a personal, you're probably going to die, so you do have to be somewhat aware. I mean, I think the Rogue gets his cheat death procced there. I'm not sure if that was a Shrapnel Blast or what, but it's pretty simple, but you don't want to totally slack. You don't want to let mobs run around the place. But for the most part, this fight's pretty chill. Just got to keep up banner as per usual, but he's doing a pretty good job of that here. Really easy fight to proc reprisal on. As soon as mob spawns, charge straight into it. Nice big bit of rage. Has his last stand running here, so he's just spamming Ignore Pain to keep that rage low. You see he's springing, going from sort of 0 to 100 rage in sort of just 2 globals, so definitely during last stand, pumping as many Ignore Pains as possible. And we're kind of just filling time here by telling you guys very basic prop warrior things while we wait for this boss to decide that he's going to let you kill him. I think we might see the really strong groups in this dungeon. They might end up sort of tanking mobs on top of the cannon, because the cannon does take full damage, and it doesn't have such a ridiculous amount of HP that you can't impact it. It's possible there's an amount of damage that you deal to the cannon that actually means you need one fuel mortar. I don't know. Like I say, we'll wait for the big boys to figure that out for us, but yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, and careful for that. You don't want to accidentally jump into the cannon by mistake. I think you can still block mobs. Like, mobs will still hit you. It doesn't drop threat. But, I don't know. You don't want to do that, obviously. Yeah, this boss isn't great. Alright, out of the cannon, and then again, you're just doing what you did before. Just a nice big target dummy. Very generously, when he does the mortar shell thing here, he does pretty much stun himself, so again, you could run out proc reprisal at that point. But again, you pretty much want to just come out of this fight. You want to finish this fight with Banner running for a considerable amount of time, or with Banner off cooldown, because after this, there's a short run. You'll be dropping combat for maybe 10 seconds after this, so you don't want to pop Banner. Like, you know, if he had Banner available now and it wasn't running, I probably wouldn't advise that you pop it, because you're gonna waste a lot of it. But yeah, there is so little happening at this point that all you can really afford to think about is minor Banner optimizations. If you are wondering, by the way, how he is doing this much damage on the overall, it's a few things, really. I mean, one is, I'm going to say it again, having essentially 100% effective uptime on Banner. I mean, you see he's dropped it here for a little bit. It's about to come back up now, but I think this is pretty much the only time in the instance that he actually does not have Banner up in combat. So, I mean, he's going to be at what? Like, he's going to be at like 97% Banner uptime, I think. I haven't checked the logs for this, but yeah. The other thing, Ravagering, essentially, as soon as it is up, that spell does a lot of damage. But the biggest thing that is kind of hard to notice is that any time he's on 3 or fewer targets and there's something to execute, it's getting executed. That spell does a lot of damage. And it also dumps a lot of rage. So the interesting thing about Execute is that it dumps rage twice as well as Revenge, right? Obviously, Revenge 20, Execute up to 40. But Revenge also, or Execute rather, also technically generates 8 rage, right? It refunds 20% if it doesn't kill. So you spend 40 and then you get 8 of that back. And none of our other abilities simultaneously spend and generate. So in terms of the rage economy and keeping Banner up, Execute is real good for that. Those packs he just did, I didn't really say anything about because there's not much to say on them. You want to interrupt Storm Shield because it makes it so anytime you hit a mob, you chain lightning each other. So that's going to be a pretty big one to interrupt, but realistically, those packs are pretty simple. Just don't pull both of the Seers at the same time, because that can be pretty rough. This boss might actually be worse than the last one. This boss sucks a lot. If you're wondering to yourself, surely these lightnings don't just spawn in completely random and inconsistent locations with 0 telegraphing and one-shot people. That is in fact exactly how they work. The locations are entirely random. They ramp up over the encounter, and there is no telegraph for them. So you see that, it hit pretty much his entire group, and there's nothing you can do about it. So hopefully that gets fixed, because I don't see how this key is possible on the higher difficulties without just coin flipping it. All you can really do as a tank here is position the boss in places that are not in lightning. A good thing to do, which he kind of is doing here, is to position it kind of near a place where you can quickly move it out of the lightning. Obviously, moving away from freezing snares. Those are very bad if you stand in them. But you see where he's positioned now, he can pretty quickly get the boss out. Just shuffle it over a little bit. Whereas if he was stood right in a corner, he would have a much longer walk. But again, there's not a huge amount of impact you can have as a tank on this encounter. It's very random. Have your finger ready on Rally and Cry for moments like this where your entire group gets hit by the dot. But that's about all you can do. I would not be surprised if you end up with a lot of times on this boss where your entire group is dead by 20% and you have to kind of solo it. But obviously, if that happens, just keep calm and fucking execute it until it dies. I actually want to just dial back really quickly here because there's something that happens with this outburst that I think is worth talking about. Let me go back kind of one pip here. So you'll see that he gets an outburst proc here. So he gets his outburst proc, and he doesn't have a ton of rage. Shield Slam has 4 seconds left on the cooldown, so let's see what happens. Hits a Revenge, does not get the Shield Slam reset proc. Hits another Revenge, again, doesn't get the Shield Slam proc. And just before then, he's out of rage. Shield Slam is still on cooldown for 2 seconds, and he's got no way of getting more rage or a Revenge proc. So in that scenario, he's kind of got 2 options. He can either sit there for 2 globals and wait for Shield Slam to come up, or he can just hit Thunderclap and accept, okay, this is a bad outburst, screwed up, whatever. And got kind of unlucky that 2 consecutive Revenges didn't proc Shield Slam. So in that scenario, if you're going to have to wait 2 globals to get a Shield Slam with outburst, just press Thunderclap and cry a little bit about it. It's not worth sitting on globals because you see now he's hit the Thunderclap off that outburst, and that's reset Shield Slam and lets him just get back into the flow of things. If it happens, it happens. It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Fill every global really is just the rule here. For the most part. But yeah, I mean, mechanically, this boss is very simple. You're just hoping your team does not get RNG killed by lightning. I would very much expect this to get fixed, because you're never going to want to see this boss in like a tyrannical MDI stream, and the casters are just going to be saying, well, here comes the coin flip. Again, just hits the entire group there. At this point, there is a safe space. There is always going to be at least one safe patch, but it can be kind of hard to see. But yeah, I mean, you know, that's a 19-minute run. You had a tank death. You had a couple DPS deaths on the last boss there. So, but by no means a flawless run, but you can see, I mean, you know, I think that's, what, almost a +3, pretty easily a +2. So it very much is just hold W, keep shield block up, avoid shrapnel blasts, and pump as hard as possible. But yeah, that's it.